Well, if we can move on to the regularly scheduled portion of this podcast, I'd like to move on to some really good news for my Chicago Cubs as Jed Hoyer finally put on his big boy pants and made a bold ass move, which he has been the most risk averse general manager I think I've ever come across, paying attention to baseball for 30 plus years. Uh, Trading for Kyle Tucker, arguably a top 5 offensive player in all of baseball. He is one of 4 players to have hit 100 home runs and gotten 80 steals since 2021. It's only 4 of them. One of them is Kyle Tucker. The other is Shohei Ohtani, Jose Ramirez, and Francisco Lindor.
It's good company.
Kyle Tucker had a 4.7 WAR last year, which might sound it's good no matter what, but it might sound a little bit low. But you also have to remember he only played 78 games last year because he broke his shin on a foul tip. Fortunately, a broken leg is not a sign of chronic injury, or he's been able to recover from that, and I'm not fearful for this coming season. It is only for this one season because he does become a free agent after the 2025 season. The Cubs gave up a sizable package, and this is where Jed put on his big boy pants and actually made a move that radically changes the Cubs offense. Traded away Isaac Paredes, who was a former Tiger and now former Cub. Kind of a mixed bag. He was not great with the Cubs by any means. He was not great with the Tigers either, but he was really good with the Rays. So I
So
kind of
good.
don't understand like what's going on. Maybe it's my fault.
I agree.
I blame myself for Isaac Paredes' poor performance everywhere but Tampa. That's a piece. I mean, he certainly didn't work out in Chicago, but that's a significant piece. But Hayden Wesneski, referred to at times as Wesnasty, but not in a long time because he's been pretty mediocre out of the bullpen. That we can afford to lose. The big piece going forward is Cam
Yeah.
Smith, the number 1 pick, Cubs number 1 pick in 2024.
Yeah.
Their number 7 overall prospect and a top 100 in all of baseball. That's the pricey part, which I would be easy to get rid of if you had Kyle Tucker for multiple years, but just for 1 year, a 1-year rental, essentially, that's a hefty price. But surprisingly, Jed Hoyer was willing to pay it, which I did not know was in his nature. We talked about a little bit. Well, we definitely did a segment on it last episode because the rumors were right there. And 24 hours later, of course, he pulls the trigger and makes the move. So we have to come back now a week later and talk about it. I'm impressed. That's as big a move as Jed's ever done. As I stated before, it radically changes the Cubs' offense. It's something you heard about, but it's like, how is this going to happen? And I just didn't see Jed actually doing enough to get it to come together. So I got to give him an A for that trade. It's the best Cubs trade in a long time. I probably need to think back a little more to quantify it in Cubs history, but to get a top 5 player in the game right now.
Yeah.
You could argue he's on par with Juan Soto, considering his full game with the power, the speed, and the defense. He's a Gold Glove defender in right field. So I'm impressed. Bravo! I've been shitting all over Jed Hoyer for a couple of years now, and this is something I really need to give him credit for. And it gives me a renewed optimism about the Cubs going into 2025. I've been complaining for 2 years. They keep sending a mediocre 500 team, hoping they could catch lightning in a bottle and win 10 more games than they're projected to, and maybe make the playoffs in a pretty mediocre National League Central. Well, now they made themselves the favorite by far, I would say, and it's just a different feeling I wasn't prepared to have 1 week ago even. So I don't know. Did you have thoughts about Kyle Tucker specifically or Jed
Yeah.
Hoyer?
Yeah. No, I think I agree with everything you said. The one thing I'll just push back on a little is you did say it, so I don't know if it's an
I said a
A.
lot of things. Sorry.
No, I know, no. You brought it up about giving up the number, 2024 number 1 draft pick, top
Mm.
7, top 100 player for someone who essentially is a rental player. Now, if they can somehow sign him, to me, then it was totally worth it.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've heard talk about that they could just extend him, which now they have a whole year to do it. Exclusive negotiating rights.
Right.
Um, I the issue is we've seen Jed Hoyer a complete role reversal. He actually was made a bold move for the first time. In order for them to extend Kyle Tucker, Tom Ricketts is going to have to also make a complete metamorphosis into something he has not been doing for
Right.
years now. Will he open the pocketbooks? Because we've seen these record contracts. We just did a whole segment last week on Juan Soto's ridiculous $760 million deal. Well, Kyle Tucker is not going to get that necessarily because he doesn't have the same age profile going forward that leads to that. Or uh, Steve Cohen and the Steinbrenner family having a dick measuring contest to see who could land the biggest prospect. That's not going to be the case for Kyle Tucker, but he is still going to command 400 million.
Yeah,
I,
400, 500 million, I'm
I
sure.
don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Um, uh, do you see Tom Ricketts signing off on that $400 million deal?
No, and that's why I think it's I get your reasoning for, and this is just one opinion versus another, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the
That's
day.
that's called a
But
podcast.
yeah,
This
but
is meaningless.
like an I give it like a B
Okay.
because of just because of the reality is they gave up all of that for 1 year. And
Mm-hmm.
then what you're going to talk about next
Yes.
is made me believe like maybe they are going to try to extend Tucker because they've freed up a bunch of money. But if they don't, then we never get to see maybe Cody Bellinger with Kyle Tucker batting behind him is a completely different scenario that
Yeah.
really pushes
Exactly.
the Cubs into a runaway with the fucking division offensively. So go
Yeah.
ahead.
And this you are transitioning perfectly in the second part of this. The duality that is the 2025 Chicago Cubs, and certainly with Jed Hoyer's behavior, because I mean, instantly adding Kyle Tucker makes the Cubs a much better team. Trading Cody Bellinger for, we heard this was happening, but potentially happening, but for trading Cody Bellinger for Cody Poteet from the New York Yankees,
Who?
which I mean, you and I are kind of clued in, especially in the American League, because we do our American League assholes fantasy league
He
AL
wasn't on a
only.
roster.
I don't remember seeing Cody Poteet come up in any of my free agent searches at any point. So
Ugh.
not only that, but that they all the Cubs also sent $5 million to the
Yes.
Yankees. So they are paying the Yankees to take Cody Bellinger off of our payroll, in the most blatant salary dump since Yu Darvish. I mean, it's the same idea, uh, and the same similarly offensive, because how on earth does that trade make losing Cody Bellinger and paying to take him off your books? How does that make the Cubs better?
It
And
doesn't.
on the surface, it does not. Today, it does not. But as you mentioned, if that money that they saved by hurting themselves somehow leads to signing Kyle Tucker, which do you believe that that's really going to be part of it and a reality? I
Mm,
don't.
yeah.
Um,
Or at
I
least
guess.
like a legitimate offensive threat to go along with them. Because again, like in my head, when they signed Tucker, first thing I went to was Cody Bellinger is going to have a bounce back year because he has protection. And Kyle Tucker doesn't need the protection because he's just that well rounded of a player. So Bellinger might hit 30 home runs this year.
Hmm.
And then what, 3 days, 2 days later, the dream was over?
Well,
I
I
mean,
think I think maybe the thought process is you can transfer that protection over to, say, a Suzuki.
eh,
Um, but yeah, exactly. That's where neither here nor there on that. I almost have to give him an incomplete until we find out where that money's going to be spent.
yeah,
And but I also am going to give him an F for this trade, because having to ask that question pisses me off, because the Cubs don't have to sell anybody to have the money to sign to sign Kyle Tucker or to
Right.
add to this roster any way they want. They're just choosing not to spend over around $240 million, which happens to be the competitive balance tax limit. So it's just eternally frustrating that money would ever become an issue with making this roster better. And trading away Cody Bellinger does not make this roster better. It saves money that can be moved around in different ways. So it's just frustrating. In like a 24-hour span, you thought the Cubs were finally acting like the big market behemoth that they are, with their own television network, owning their own stadium, owning all of the lucrative, most valuable land in the Midwest, owning all of that around the stadium, and yet somehow still at the same time acting like a middle or low or small market team. It's just confounding and frustrating forever.
Yeah. I don't get it. I think
Word Hole Media.